All right, so you wanna make sourdough. What are you gonna need? First of all, what you need is starter. If you have a friend with starter, they will very happily share it with you because we always have too much. I've given it away to a few people now. More people, please come get it. It's too big. So you're gonna need starter, which you need to feed every day if you leave it on your counter. I like to add equal parts flour and water until it no longer smells like alcohol. It depends on the size of your jar, what that means as far as flour. Usually 4 big like scoops, tablespoons of flour and then an equivalent amount of water is what makes mine happy. But if you have a bigger jar or a smaller jar, you're gonna adjust it. I have found the best way to really measure it is literally just to mix some in, stir, 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 smell it. If it smells like alcohol, mix a little bit more in, smell it. And when it stops smelling that alcoholic smell, then you know that it is fed and happy. All right, something else you're gonna want. A little bread basket. I put a plastic cover on mine just because it's easy to reuse. There are also fabric ones which are very lovely, or some people I think just do it plain. I like the plastic cover, but you want this because it's gonna make your life easier to form into that pretty round loaf shape. You will want a scorer, which is just like a razor blade. That's gonna help you cut the top of the bread so that it steams and pops up all lovely. And then you need a Dutch oven. There are different recipes if you don't have a Dutch oven. I have Dutch ovens, so I use them. This one is 2 quarts. It's like the cute heart one from Amazon. But I've also used an older one that's like at least twice as big. That was like my grandmother's Dutch oven from 100 years ago. This one I think is 2 quarts, and then the one that she has is bigger. You also need water, room temperature preferably, and you need flour of some kind. I use just regular baking flour. You can use bread flour. I haven't seen a difference, so I just use regular baking flour because that's what I have on hand. And salt. Generally, salt is gonna make the biggest difference taste-wise, and also how long you proof is gonna make the biggest taste-wise. If I'm just making a quick little loaf, a lot of times I can get away with proofing on the counter and just doing the bake from beginning to end all in one day. But depending on how much time you have and what kind of schedule you got going on, you can also proof overnight in the fridge, and it makes it a little bit easier because you have a little bit more flexibility. Same thing with your starter. If you don't want to feed it every day because it's just too high maintenance, you can feed it and put it in the fridge and kind of like put it to sleep for a while. I've done that when I was traveling. And then when you come back, you just kind of revive it, pour off any excess gross stuff, and then feed it again, and it'll come back to life. It's pretty resilient. I've almost killed mine more times than I can count. And I've revived it, and it works awesome. It makes yummy loaves. All right, let's get going. All right, welcome to Shannon's Chaotic Sourdough Making. It is approximate. It is not exact. I am not an expert, but I've made many delicious loaves. So this is what we're gonna do today. We're gonna make a small loaf for a small Dutch oven. It's about 2 quarts. Okay, I'm gonna walk through the steps bit by bit and show you how my loaves come out. So I have my starter. I have a lot of starter. I generally do about 1/2 cup of starter for my smaller loaves. And you would double that for large loaves. Double everything for a large loaf. Okay, so I have my starter. And I like to scoop, there we go. I like to scoop everything out so I get all the goodness. All right, then I add my water, which is gonna be about 1.5 cups of water. And then I add roughly 4 cups of flour. Now, some people like bread flour. I just use whatever flour I have available. And then I do 1 tablespoon of salt. And mix, 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 mix. Just really combine everything as well as you can. Woo. Flour is flying. Mix around. It's starting to get a little harder to mix, which is what you want. Just Just combine it as well as possible. All right, and it should start looking like that. That is shaggy, and that's what you want. Okay, and then after it's nice and shaggy, you are going to take a towel and completely wet it. Okay, wring it out, and then you put your damp towel over your shaggy dough and you leave it for an hour. And then we'll come back and we'll start doing stretch and folds. Okay, so it's been an hour. We are going to do our first stretch and fold. We've got to get our hands wet and just dig right in. So this first time it's really crumbly, so I like to kind of squeeze it together just to make it combine. I also like to try and get all the bits from the bottom. And then you just sort of want to let it, you know, stretch. And then I literally fold. It's kind of squish, squish, squish. And just sort of combine it. All right. And then once it starts getting really tacky, like sticking to my fingers, I say, all right, it's good. Put the damp cloth back over it and give it 30 minutes to rest before doing another stretch and fold. And don't forget to use a lot of water to rinse off any of the sourdough dough because it can mess up your pipes, your plumbing pipes. So just use a lot to really liquefy it so that you don't have plumbing issues. All right, see you in half an hour. All right, so the timer went off. We're ready for our next stretch and fold. Getting our hands dripping wet, and we're digging in. Oh yeah, this is already feeling much, much silkier. I don't know if you can kind of see how it's smooth, and it just combines really nicely. And I'm just literally stretching and folding. And there's no exact perfect way to do this. You're just trying to combine it and kind of build the dough a little bit. Yeah, see, it's a lot smoother looking. Okay. All right. Put that back in there. We cover it with our damp cloth. We let it rest for another 30 minutes using my little froggy timer. All right, see you in 30 minutes. All right, here we are for our final stretch and fold. It feels much smoother. Can you see that? All right, we're just doing a few turns here, and then we're gonna put it back in. Yeah, it feels nice. And then we leave it in here, and I don't put the cold, wet cover back on. I use a dry one because you wanna leave it to rise for however long, hour, 2 hours, depends on how cold your house is, until it's doubled. And it should have kind of a springy touch to it. I like to, because my house tends to be a little bit cooler, we have a lot of tile, I like to put it under the oven's surface light to give it a little bit more warmth so that it'll puff up more. So it's an idea. Or if you have a sunny window or something, maybe you could do that. Basically, you just want it to have enough warmth that it can rise and be springy to the touch. All right, see you in a bit. All right, it's been about 2 hours. See how it's spongy? Like when I poke it, it pops back, but it hasn't grown like I want it to. So I'm gonna take the little cover off of it. I'm gonna let it sit under the heat for another hour or so. And then I'm gonna check it again, see if we can get a little bit more rise off of it. I have baked it when it was like this before and it turns out okay, but I have the luxury of time today, so I'm gonna just go ahead and let it chill for a little bit more under the heat, under the little oven light, and see if we can get it to just puff up a little bit more. Okay, so it's been a few more hours. It's looking a little fluffier, not crazy fluffy, but fluffy enough. So we're gonna call that good. And we're going to do the next step, which is flouring the counter. Whee! And that just kind of, yeah, that's good. Okay, and then we're gonna do this in a way that shows you guys. Then we're going to dump our dough. Oh yeah, it's nice and stretchy. Look at that. That's good. Yeah, okay. And then we're going to, okay, stretch it and then kind of tuck it under and roll it, right? Like a little baby. So cute, okay? Then we are going to put it in our basket, right? How adorable. Okay, I am going to also at this time score it. So I like to do just a slice around, and then I also do like some other little slices just to try to get it a little bit more room to grow and expand. And I'm gonna leave that on the counter for another like maybe hour or two. And then I'm gonna grease my Dutch oven and flour it so that the loaf comes out easily. And we're gonna bake and have a delicious, it's all flour, oh my gosh, delicious sourdough loaf. All right, so I'll see you back here in 1 to 2 hours. Bye. Okay, so it's been a few hours. Bread has proofed, looking good. So what I'm doing is I'm using coconut oil and I am greasing the inside of my Dutch oven with just like a paper towel and coconut oil. So I spread coconut oil evenly all over the Dutch oven. And now what I like to do is I like to put flour over the coconut oil, and this helps create a nice base so that it won't stick, so that the bread won't get stuck in your pot. Okay, so I'm kind of using the paper towel, spreading it around. Obviously, normally I'd be wearing an apron. I don't know why I'm not doing it right now, but I'm not. Chaotic baking. Okay, and then tap, 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 any extra flour, and it looks, yeah, looks roughly like that, okay? And then, a little extra, okay. Then I'm gonna put the lid on it. I'm gonna put it in the oven at 425, and I'm gonna let it come up to heat. 425, okay? And then once it comes up to the full heat, that's when we add our loaf into the Dutch oven. See you in a couple minutes. All right, we've reached our ideal temperature, 425. Yes, we have. We are so excited to bake bread. Yay! You can see it's dark outside. It's so dark. We've been waiting all day for this. Yay! This is another advantage of maybe doing proofing overnight, is that you don't have to spend your entire day doing this. All right, so I'm just gonna pop the lid off. Then I take my dough upside down, gently boop it into the pan, and then I take 2 ice cubes and I pop them in on either side to create nice steam. Put the lid back on. And we set our froggy timer for 25 minutes. At which point we will check our bread and remove our lid. All right, froggy timer is on its last little second here, so we're going to take the lid off of our bread. Ooh, okay, I gotta show you this. It has puffed up beautifully, but it's still very pale, so it needs to go back in for a final bake at 17 minutes. Froggy, do your thing. And then it'll be ready to take out and eat. Yay! All right, so we are at time. We're gonna pull out our loaf. Ooh, that is beautiful. Look at that. That came out perfectly. So I'm gonna let that cool for a little bit before I take it out of the Dutch oven. And then once it's cool, it'll be ready for slicing and enjoying. This has been Shannon's Chaotic Baking. I hope you enjoyed.